Night of the Living Dead is considered by many to be one of the greatest and most influential horror movies ever made. To some people, it too is considered to be one of the greatest movies ever made, period. So, a decade after its release in 1968, director George A. Romero picks up where he left off with Night, with Dawn of the Dead. The country, and quite possibly the world, is still being plagued by the zombie epidemic, with the dead now outnumbering the living, and society starting to crumble. At a television station, a couple, played by David Emge and Galen Ross, and two SWAT team officers, played by Ken Foree and Scott Reinier, steal the traffic helicopter and fly to an abandoned mall. There they fight off the bloodthirsty horde and wait for help that may not be coming. George A. Romero takes all the rules and plot motifs that he established in the genre-making Night of the Living Dead and builds on them. I love Night, so I was excited to see what Romero would bring to the table this time. The writing is almost flawless, and the dialogue works great with the characters. Romero makes present a stronger feeling of paranoia and fear in Dawn that was absent in Night. This time I feel like the world was literally coming to an end. The television programs showcase childish bickering between scientists and show hosts, arguing over in what manner the epidemic should be handled in. This works out well because it's perfectly understandable that some people wouldn't want to destroy people that were close to them. The writing isn't completely flawless, though, but we'll get to that later. David Emge does a good job as Steven, but his presence is definitely diminished by Ken Foree and Scott Reinier. Foree steals the show as Peter. He's funny and compassionate, but can be strong, demanding, and to the point, if need be. Reinier does a good job as Roger, but he seems a little too excited. He's constantly hooting and hollering. I don't know, I just feel like he should be a little more serious during this time. Galen Ross does a fair job as Fran, but she comes off as a stereotypical woman, much like Barbara was in Night. Fran is definitely stronger, though, which I like, but she isn't perfect. The real stars of the movie, though, are the zombies. Special effects wizard Tom Savini does the makeup and effects for Dawn. He also has a small supporting role that he does a great job with. The zombies are much more frightening in this film, trudging around with similar grayish-blue tints to their skin tone. The blood is really bright red, an unintentional mistake. It looks pretty fake, but Romero says it contributes to the comic booky style of the film. I can see what he means. Savini also upped the gore from Night. Zombies are constantly getting large holes blown in their head with bits of brain matter spraying all over the place. I said the blood looked faked, but the guts do look pretty darn real. I dig it all. The mall setting provides for all kinds of cool scenes, and I was satisfied with what was given. It's large enough to evade zombies, but unfamiliar enough to make it tough. The scenes of Roger and Peter driving big rigs to block off the mall's entrances is memorable and a great action scene. And the fact that the four still take time to indulge in the goodies the mall has to offer provides some relief from the gore-soaked suspense. A lot of people debate over which film is better, Night or Dawn. Well, in some ways I like Dawn better than Night, but in others, Night reigns superior. Some things I like more about Dawn is the action. Night relies heavily on atmosphere and horror, which is great and works well, but Dawn is more exciting and eventful. I also like the gore, just a sick obsession I have. I also compare the line Peter has to a line Johnny has in Night. Peter says, "When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth." Johnny says, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." I don't know why, but for me, these two lines just set the tone for the two films. Zombies may not seem so threatening in video games and such because it's easy to saw through them. But seriously, think about it. An army of practically unstoppable killers that can outnumber the living. That's some intense crap, and these two lines just seem to emphasize that eerie fact even more. However, this is the big flaw I find with Dawn. When in the helicopter, they start to run low on fuel and land at the mall. They stay at the mall for several days, maybe even weeks. Now, even though the helicopter is low on fuel, they could still try to make it to somewhere safer. So why would they stay at the mall for so long? Why did they stop at all? I'm probably missing something. It wouldn't surprise me if I was. But Dawn didn't have the same kind of feeling of hopelessness and seclusion as Night. They have all kinds of weapons at their disposal because of the mall, and a helicopter. But nonetheless, I find Night and Dawn to be two films of equally epic quality. In conclusion, Dawn of the Dead is a great film with great characters, and is an everlasting pinnacle of zombie film history. Romero would go on to make 4 more films in his Of the Dead series, and this film would spawn a remake in which many of the cast members have cameos in. Many call it one of the best films in 1978, one of the best zombie films, one of the best horror films, and one of the best films, period. I'd agree completely. Violent, suspenseful, and completely gory, Dawn of the Dead is a true red-blooded creep show. That is my diagnosis.